Okay, we are back. We're getting close to the end. 8 class pets plus 1 squirrel divided by 1 dog equals chaos. And we are on Galileo and Newton, the Science Lab geckos. This chapter is hard for me to read aloud. I'm just going to warn you. Because they take turn. It looks like the script to a play. Can you see that? When you're in a play, each character has their name and then it says the lines that they're going to say. So when you're reading it out loud, you're supposed to say Newton, Galileo, Newton, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to try to do the different geckos so you can get a sense of who's saying what, okay? Galileo says, most geckos sleep by day. Newton says, but we are day geckos, so we sleep by night and are awake during the day. Just like the students in Mr. Russell's science lab. Well, most of them. Some of those students seem to like to sleep during the day. Galileo says, our scientific family name is Geckonidae, Newton says, and our genus name is Phelsuma. We are, Galileo cuts him off, reptiles. We live in a vivarium where there are plants and bamboo to climb on and crickets and mealworms to eat. And sometimes we get mangoes. I like mangoes. I know you do. I prefer the houseflies, which are crunchier, but not as sweet. Mr. Russell teaches science. We like science. Every year, Mr. Russell has a science fair. We especially like the science fair. It's fun and instructional. That's what Mr. Russell says. I was quoting him. Quoting is fine. Copying is wrong. I know that. The students make replicas of the solar system and the human eye and volcanoes. I like the volcanoes. They do experiments with helium and fruit flies. Sometimes we get the leftover fruit flies. Some of the children bring their pets in and do reports on them. We've seen kittens and tree toads and mice and worms. I don't think the worms were pets. Sometimes they do a special report on us. We are very photogenic. If you're photogenic, it means you look good in pictures or on screen. We never blink when the camera's flash goes off. That's because we don't have eyelids. We've seen demonstrations on fire safety and the Heimlich maneuver and how to make paper. Sometimes things go wrong. Not often, but sometimes things go very wrong. That's how we knew what to do when the squirrel, the hamster, the rabbit, the rat, the macaw, and the snake, don't forget the snake. I wasn't going to forget the snake. They came into our room. They said the dog was going to get loose from the box and come after them. They said it was an emergency. We know what to do in case of an emergency. Dial 911. I was going to say that. I said it already. You can say it the next part. But that was the exciting part. The next part is exciting too. Not as stop sulking. Dial 911. I already said that. Now we've both said it. Yes, Newton, now we've both said it, only I said it first. So they asked, what does dial 911 mean? And we showed them the telephone. I showed them the telephone. I showed it too. I showed it first. They're like bickering, aren't they? Luckily, the hamster knows his numbers, and the snake was able to knock the phone to where the rat could reach it. The rat has dexterous fingers and pressed the buttons. The macaw yelled, help, help! The squirrel knocked some beakers on the floor so there was the sound of breaking glass. The rabbit screamed. I never heard a rabbit scream before. Somebody should mention it in a science fair report. Ah! The emergency people came fast. They always come fast. By then the snake was falling asleep because he's a reptile, like us, and he needed to go back to his vivarium with the heat lamp. We like our heat lamp. And the turtle likes ours. She kept saying, wait for me, guys. She didn't catch up until the principal came. His face was almost as red and splotchy as the snake's belly. That means he was mad. I was telling by showing. It took a long time to round up all the animals, except for us because we are still here. There's the principal. Yikes. And the fish were still in their tank, even though their tank was in the wrong room. And the turtle wasn't hard to catch. Neither was the snake asleep on our floor. The squirrel ran outside during the confusion, so all that leaves is the dog. Do you know the scientific name for dog? Of course I do. It's Family Canidae Genus Canis. You always like to get the last word in, Galileo. No, I don't. Yes, you do. Do not. Do. Not always. See, that one's hard. Okay. Next chapter is Cuddles, the principal's dog. Boom, boom, boom. That's what's called a plot twist. We knew there was a dog, but did you know it was the principal's dog? Do you know that our principal has a pet? Do you know what it is? Have you seen it on Zoom? You should ask her. You should ask her about her pet. Okay, Master, this is Cuddles, the principal's dog. Master lives right next door to the school he owns, so I get to see him a lot. Sometimes he brings me to meet the children there. This would be a perfect place to live, except for that nasty squirrel, Twitch. Twitch acts like he owns the yard. He eats the seeds Master puts out for the birds. He jumps from tree to tree just out of reach and calls down to me that people like squirrels better than they like dogs. He says that's why Master ties me to a long rope leash when I'm in the yard. He says that's why Master puts me on a short chain leash when we go for a walk. No leash for me, nuh-uh, Twitch brags. He runs back and forth just beyond where the leash stretches to. He says, ha ha, your master doesn't make me wear a collar and leash to keep me in one place. He must not trust you, Cuddles. It's kind of teasing him. Twitch seems to wait for me to be watching before he'll climb into the garbage can at the edge of the playground. Oh, Cuddles, he'll say, there's wonderful tasty garbage in here today. There's a French fry and half a bologna sandwich and some macaroni and cheese. I can't remember, do you like macaroni and cheese, Cuddles? I stand there drooling, knowing I can't cross a short distance to get into that delightful sounding garbage can. Sometimes the only way to avoid Twitch is to go to sleep. And that's what I was doing when Twitch ran right over my nose. Yow, that hurt. I just knew he did it on purpose and I went running after him. I was so mad that I ran so fast that the rope leash broke. I went on running, pulling that long rope with me. An owl was chasing Twitch too. I don't know what Twitch did to make her mad, but I saw Twitch was heading for the school. The man who works for Master cleaning and repairing the building had hung a big banner over the sign that said welcome because Master had invited special guests to come the next day. The man had left the door open while he was putting his ladder back in his truck. Don't you dare go into Master's school, I shouted at Twitch. Guess what? He ignored me. In he went as though he owned the place, just the way he acts as though he owns my yard. The owl knew school was off limits. He's all yours, she said, winging away. I was in the right, but the trouble was all the pets took Twitch's side. From room to room I went, chasing Twitch. A few things got knocked down or spilled or broken, but it was all Twitch's fault. So whose perspective is this chapter from? Cuddles' perspective, right? And Cuddles feels like this kind of happened to him. He wasn't meaning to do anything wrong. He's not the bad guy, right? Those pets all work together, even animals that shouldn't work together. Finally, they knocked a big box on top of me. It was dark in there, and I wasn't sure if that snake had been trapped inside with me or not because the pine shavings kind of smelled like him. He didn't look like the kind of snake who bites, but you can't trust snakes. I hunkered down and sat quiet. I could hear the pets laughing out in the hall and having a good time together. It was like a party. The squirrel was telling jokes, mostly to do with me. And the hamster and the parrot were telling everyone about how their names came from books and they were all acting like that was a big deal. And the rabbit was saying that they needed to get out and get together more often, and they had to figure out a way for the squirrel to join them too. And then she asked the rat if he could open all the cages again the next day. And the rat said yes, in between carrying on about something or other having to do with Cinderella. And the turtle said they could all work together on an art project. And the geckos were saying that they knew how to make a working volcano, and did anyone want to see? And even the fish were saying something, I don't know what, it was too bubbly for me to understand. I wasn't hearing the snake, which was part of the reason I suspected he was under the box with me, but I had just decided I needed to get out from under there, snake or no snake, when suddenly there were sirens and people rushing in shouting, "This is the police!" And I heard the pets scatter, and then someone lifted the box off of me. No snake. But I saw something worse. The person who had lifted the box was Master. Cuddles, Cuddles, what have you done? He asked. Bad dog, bad dog. I tried to tell him about the squirrel and about what the pets were planning, but Master has trouble understanding more than the simplest things I say. He usually gets, I'm hungry and I want to play, but that's about it. He obviously had no idea what I was saying there in the school. He had just taken hold of my collar when other people ran into the room. Some had black hats and shiny badges, and some had red helmets and boots and a hose. "Is there a thief?" shouted one of the people. "Is there a disorderly conduct?" shouted another of the men. "Is there a fire in the walls?" shouted a third. And the fourth asked, "Do you need us to knock a hole in the wall?" And he raised a sharp axe. "No!" Master cried. "No, no, no!" He sounded upset. Upset means danger. Any dog knows that. I lunged forward and barked back at the man with the axe, barking, "Back, back, back!" And Master held onto my collar. "Cuddles," he ordered. "Sit." And I sat, because that's what a well-behaved dog does. But I kept growling to warn the man that he'd better be on his best behavior too. Whew. Oh no. So from Cuddles' perspective, he's just trying to help his master out, right? His human. The man with the axe backed up so quickly he knocked into the man with the hose, and the man with the hose backed up so quickly he tripped over the box that had covered me. He fell and must have done something to the hose, because suddenly water shot out of it. Whoosh! The water hit Master so hard it knocked him down on his bottom. "Stop!" he spluttered. The man with the hose turned the stream of water away from him. Whoosh! It caught one of the shiny badges men, causing him to land on his bottom. I bit at the stream of water to tell it that it was bad, and the man with the hose ran away, still holding the hose so that it squirted at the desks instead of the people, but for some reason, Master didn't thank me for saving him. Once they got the water turned off, Master locked me in his office while he and the men with the badges and the men with the helmets rounded up the pets. It took a really long time. He was still wet when he came to get me. He was also tired and grumpy. He took hold of my collar and held onto it all the way out of the school, across the schoolyard, across the backyard, and into the house with his shoes going squish, squish, squish. "Cuddles," he said, "I don't know what got into you. Tomorrow was supposed to be a special day." I hung my head. I hung my tail. He crouched down beside me and looked deep into my eyes. He said, "I bet you have a story to tell." And then he said, "And I wish you could tell me." And he fluffed my ears. "I still love you," he said. I wagged my tail and licked his face to tell him I loved him too. Being a dog is the best thing in the world. Next chapter is Twitch, Schoolyard Squirrel. I think it's the last chapter.